Kristen.
It's Lenny. Wow. Even being the sort of novena type 7-day candle, you can see the top of it is done. And we put in.
I talk about setting the table for the dead if you've had a table that's set with them before. Having the same dinner, creating that same memory, the same sense. They can smell things.
Dragging Brandon back on.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
We've been looking for abductions all night. Who are those two humans? That's Betty and Barney Rubble. Dumbass, you're thinking of Betty and Barney Hill. Already abducted. Does he remind you of Travis Scott? Dumbass, you're thinking of Travis Walton. Already abducted. I'm starving. What are you going to stop for something to eat later? The scanner relays came back. That's Chris and Kristen from Bigfoot and the Bunny. Which one is Bigfoot? Which one is the bunny? Dumbass. Oh my god, you're such a dumbass. Such a dumbass. Such a dumbass. Such a dumbass.
This
Welcome to Dark Horse Paranormal, Bigfoot and the Bunny, and whatever we're calling things this week. How the hell are you guys? Good to see you. Hello, Bob Burnell. Hello, Brandon. Hello, Jack Kilowatt. Hello, everyone. It's great to see you guys. Great to be here.
yes, very much so.
And it's another Saturday, and thank you for spending your Saturday evening with us as we bring back our guest from last week with the wonderful Lynn Monet. We're going to discuss elementals, a particular one in particular. Is that
Yes.
proper?
Mhm.
That's proper.
It's actually proper. You
That's
did
proper.
very well.
I did fantabulous. And without wasting a whole lot of time, I think we're just going to bring her on and get right to things. Let's see. Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Welcome
Hello.
back.
Good evening.
Yay. Hey, look what I got. I have my own coffee mug.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
that is
cool.
very cool.
Where can we get
Omnipresent.
I'm
these?
very proud. Pardon me?
Where was that just for your own or?
Well,
or-
I'm going to start selling them on my website. So
Oh,
people,
very
yeah,
nice.
and then giving them away for free to friends too. So anyway, I am tickled to death about tonight. I was driving since 1:00 this morning. I got to Louisiana today. I am sitting in the Enchanted House as we speak. We were talking about last week.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting off to the side because I'm hoping that Bob's a little cheeky tonight, that he may show up and you may see some movement in the background. I'm moving my head because I call them balusters, but those are the stairs. And that's where he likes to peek his face through sometimes. So you're going to want to watch for movement. And if he decides to show up, he will pass in front of that door. He will peek through those things. And if you have the gift of second sight or whatever, I mean, look for the waffling to the air. He looks like a ghost. So don't expect a full embodied apparition to come walking in. I mean, he looks like that. So don't doubt yourself. Kind of look. He is short. He's under 3 feet tall, but he may want to grace us with his presence. I'm hoping. Maybe not, but
so.
we'll
I
hope so.
too.
The wonderful
Yeah,
Mr. Scott Horn has
Sorry,
graced
Bob.
us with his presence tonight. Hello,
Hi,
Scott.
Hi,
And,
Scott. Hi, Bob. Hi, Brandon. Hi, Echo. And I'm sure that, anybody
Jack,
else that I missed. Jack. Hello,
Mr.
everybody.
Jack is in the audience. And last week, and just to recap, I think most of these folks are here, but this thing will get replayed and replayed and replayed. When we're talking about Bob in the background, what are we talking about, Lynn?
Oh, he's our resident Fae. For those that weren't here last week, I don't think Scott was able to come last week, but I inherited a house that I thought was haunted, and my sister had thought was haunted while she was living here. So she was doing things to protect herself, and nothing was working. And my son and I came in and did a fire blessing, and I sent you some pictures of the fire blessing with actual spirits. You can see the spirits in the fire. Did you see the one with the horns?
Yes.
Yeah,
There was-
they are trippy. I mean, I like these things.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Very cool the way you work the fire through a house. Yep.
So, I'm after my son and I went through the house with the fire thing. Things didn't change, so we started noticing this little being that was under 3 feet tall. Looked, as my son described it, did you see Hogwarts? So it looked like the banker on Hogwarts. He now looks more like Dobby. Very, very sweet. So I don't know how he may present, but he likes those stairs. And when we first had him identified, I had reached out to Brian Bowden, which many of us know, who verified and has seen him through his remote viewing. Katie Turner also. Jim Rupert and Melissa Rupert actually came here, and Jim saw him in person. Yes. So it's not just my family seeing him, it's other people seeing them too. My son and I've seen him at the same time, and that sort of thing. So he may, he would like to, he's asked me to write books that stem off. So I'm writing a book right now called Omnipresent. It's in the Omnipresent series of 5 books, called Gnome, Place Like Home. And to bridge the gap between the Fae and elemental world and the human world, because of traditional religion and the way that the Fae and elementals have been demonized by Christianity, who has a tendency to demonize anything that's different than what they believe. And I'm not trying to insult anybody, but
Absolutely not.
and it just so he's to help bridge the gap between the two. And he's turned out, as Chris had chosen a very, very wonderful title last week about the haunted blessing, and he has turned out to be such an asset in many, many ways.
And that's the thing about the paranormal, right? It's like all fun and games until something actually happens. And then no matter what it is, and it can be the smallest thing, a ball rolled across the floor. It's like, oh my God, we've got a demon. And everything's gone out. And it's not that you really think it's a demon, right? But it is just so frightening that physics go out the window and we're so not used to it. When the things actually occur, It's very scary.
We're also sensitized to like TV and stuff and the shows, all the shows
course.
that,
Of course.
entertainment purposes.
Shows, religion, all these things can play a role in just kind of making you feel like there's something really wrong here. But as you have found out for yourself, that it was really kind of a blessing, right? And you've more or less made friends. And the idea of elementals, one of the things we were talking about before the show, is something I feel is like a real gray area in the paranormal. And people don't know exactly what it is. I mean, we're talking about elements, right? We're talking about fire. We're talking about water. We're talking about earth. And we're, air and the air elements. And a gentleman, a very smart gentleman, his name was Paracelsus. Paracelsus. I always screw up his name. I'm so sorry. I'm so bad with names, and we can say it 10 times before the show. As soon as I'm on, I will say it wrong. Paracelsus was a medieval, meaning the time period. He was born in 1493. He was a gentleman. He's a Swiss physician, an alchemist, a theologian, a philosopher. As part of the German Renaissance, he was a pioneer in several aspects of the medical revolution. He's considered the father of toxicology, and this is coming from Wikipedia. Just to give credit where credit's
However,
due.
we did watch a big thing on
did.
Esoterica. Give him a plug and shout
Esoterica
out.
is an amazing channel on YouTube. You can learn so much from watching that. And he kind of classified the different elementals, at least then, and some of this is still used today as far as like directions go and what they are. Is just kind of an overview, and he thought that like from the north we were talking about gnomes and that related to earth. When we talked about the east, it was air elementals, and that was sylphs. And that's more or less like the kind of fairy, like when people think about fairies with like wings, kind of that would fit in there. Gnomes would fit in the north and be like the earth. The undines, and mermaids is west of water elementals, and southern would be fire and like the salamander type elementals. So Paracelsus, a very interesting guy, and I think we're going to delve deeper in future shows on that. But the guy you're talking about, that I think you affectionately refer to as Bob, would fall kind of under the gnome category, and that is what he called them, gnomes. Yeah,
he actually he calls himself a rockin', but not like rocket, or it's like rock and then en, and he has talked about how he worked, and you can hear him mulling around underneath the deck in the front of the house. Sometimes you can hear him while you're out there, but he has been sharing such amazing stories. And the thing is I know nothing about the Fae and Elementals. The guy that you're talking about, I've never even heard of before because I don't know. So I'm kind of a fresh mind that way for downloads. So I'm hoping, and they are downloading because I've been asked to write 3 books in a series. I'm in addition to that going to do a children's book about meeting Bob. One of those one-liner pages with pictures of him and him talking about taking care of the earth, talking about what crystals do in your energetic bodies, and also to respect like your salamanders and things like that, and the different sprites, and to look for things to kind of start to give children at an early age information to start to enlighten them, for lack of a better word, in that direction. So I had actually asked him recently in a meditation, I'm like, I want to see your features clearly, because even though I'm going to be making more of a cartoon kind of picture of him, I wanted to get it right to scale, because from the top, his head almost he has kind of a triangular look where it kind of narrows in, but his head is very, very flat on the top, but it's blocky. I mean, you could like almost sit something on it because it's almost like that flat. It's just, it's very, very flat. And so he's been kind of coming through, and I can see why people, I mean, he doesn't look like anything from here. So people, if they don't look like people, then they're afraid of them. And like you said too, about the demon thing. I mean, the first thing they do is, there's a demon in my house. And like 99.9% of the time it's not.
Right.
It's, you know, it's a,
That's
it's a, you know, so
Demon
but-
in itself is a funny word because it comes from the word daemon, which is this kind of Greek word. It's an old word, and it didn't necessarily mean evil. It didn't have anything to do with this pre-Christianization of like,
Mhm.
all the old gods are evil and they're demons and they're going to pull you away from whatever. They could be good or bad. They really were just messengers between deities and
Mhm.
people. That's all that really is, a daemon with a, you know, an eye in it. So
Yeah, and you know, and there's so much that we don't know, but because there's been so much fear porn, for lack of a better word, ever since time began, to keep everybody in that herd mentality to go into one direction and not question. So,
Yeah.
but here we are questioning. And anybody, please watch the back of me. I am in the enchanted house. And as I've mentioned too, you know, it's open to friends to come and visit if they want to experience, and they can stay if they wish. But he has a tendency to put his face through that area. Let me move my head where the stairs are. He likes to come through that. And please excuse the kitty. We've got kittens in the house. My son is staying here, and I brought him 2 kittens, so there are kitten toys scattered on the floor. And you'll see him, he comes through there because the portal that he enters in through the house, which now he just walks through the door, but before is underneath that stairwell where he would go up to the 3rd bedroom floor. And I actually took a picture of the rock, and I've shared it with Chris and Kristen. And Bob's not quite ready to have it shown publicly. But Chris, when you looked at that rock, it looks unusual, doesn't it? But yet it's shaped like a heart, kind of.
I was just going to say it's shaped like
it
a
almost
bloody
has a
heart,
flat face, and
it's got a groove in it, like a divot, a hole.
And that could
but it's not
like protrusions of the skull and possibly horns or some other thing.
And the color, it's like, it's not remarkable. I mean, you know, we're always looking for the beautiful shiny stuff, you know what I mean, or the crystals type thing, but it's just a very average rock. And no, I didn't touch it when I took a picture of it. I knew better last time. It made my teeth go on fire because I could feel the energy coming up. But I'm hoping, because he is a little cheeky, that Bob may decide to show with movement, so people watch for that in the background. He might show up. He's a little bashful at the moment, but you know, as we're talking more about him, he might like that, and he might come forward, and you might see some movement in the background. So yeah, don't think it's your eyes, just kind of check in and look. And
we had
so hopefully
a question for you from Barb Brunell, and I'm sorry I skipped over it, Bob. Lynn, so in Maine, my old partner investigated a case where the people living in this home had a gnome-like creature who everyone actually saw. I thought this was common to see them, but now I'm learning that it's rare. So he's asking, is it rare to see an elemental?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, and again, it depends on where your gifts are at, I guess, too. You know, the thing is I didn't know what it was when we first saw him. And because he was so angry and nasty and screaming obscenities at me constantly, and my name was, you know, the F-bomb for the longest time, very quick and tight together, you know, kind of thing. I had no idea. And it wasn't until I had reached out to people that we all know and respect. As a matter of fact, I reached out to Brandon too, because I'm like, Brandon, oh my gosh, you know, we've got this elemental in our house. What do you do? And he gave me some things to do too. So, and I appreciated that, but it's just, it's an unusual thing. Really, we see them all of the time, but we don't realize that that's what it is. And again, because they're in that different dimension, that they appear ghost-like, for lack of a better word. People again flee from them and run, you know, that way, unless it's something like you said, a salamander. Salamanders are some of the, you know, the sprites, or at least some of the water sprites do come in on this. I'm learning so much, so many things about them, but I'm trying to avoid other people's material. I want new stuff that comes in directly, that I'm being told from the mouth of basically, you know, those, and what they want to have known. Because like he had mentioned the rock, and even tonight I had brought him I had gone to a crystal show, and I'm like, okay, you know, I'm picking up all of these beautiful shiny things. He's like, no, I don't, you know, I want something rough, something not overly handled. So I found this beautiful piece of turquoise, and I'm like, okay, this. And then I get home, and there's this little piece of pyrite in the bottom of my bag that I never picked up. I don't know how it got there. So he picked it out. So the pyrite is from Peru. The turquoise is from Mexico. I had gotten a little tiny piece of tiger's eye from Madagascar. And I brought them here tonight to leave with his rock. That was when I took the picture of it. And all of a sudden, and I mean, and it's daytime. Okay, it's daytime. All of a sudden, I hear this owl hooting over in the distance by a tree. Like it, first of all, it was like right over me. And I'm like, okay, is that you, Bob? Hoot, hoot, hoot. Where do you want me? He didn't want me to put the rock where I was going to put it. He was trying to direct me because of the energetic triangle patchwork that he's using in the yard. So I'm like, okay, where do you want it? And I could hear him then hoot, hoot, hoot over here. So I was moving it, you know, I said I would move it to kind of direct me. And I thought, well, that's weird. An owl during the daytime, but it's not. I recently had a friend, I call her Lisa W because she wants to kind of stay behind the scene. And she had said to me, she said, ask Austin if he has seen the rabbit. I'm like, the rabbit? I'm like, okay. Because I remember the story that I told last time on the show about Bob's rabbit. But this was a different rabbit. And she said, has he seen the rabbit? So I asked Austin finally the other day. I said, hey, you know, oh no, I didn't ask him. He said to me, he was mowing the grass, and he said, wow, you know, in that pile of stuff in the backyard, when I was mowing the grass, there was this rabbit that crawled out of the pile. He said, but it was a huge rabbit. He said, it was as big as a cat. He said he had never seen a rabbit that large before. And I'm like, well, first of all, Bob can shift change, you know, because every time you put the beignet or anything out there for him, you can go back an hour later and it's gone. It's completely gone. But the thing is that I thought that was interesting that he brought it up right after Lisa had asked me about it. So I went back to Lisa and I said, Austin saw the rabbit, but I didn't mention anything about the size. And she came back to me and she said, and it's an unusually large rabbit. And I said, yeah. As a matter of fact, he did mention that it was an unusually large rabbit. So he does shift change, and I haven't figured out yet if the rabbit is his shift changing or if he is with the rabbit and that is his rabbit. But the way that the pieces of the puzzle all fell into place. You know, I mean, Lisa's never been here. You know, she does channel Bob for me a lot of the times, and she has said, and also Katie Turner has channeled him as well. And they've mentioned that the thing about him is that the energy is very, very different than when they channel somebody like a deceased loved one or something like that. You know, that it's different, and it's right. No, it's not. And you can't, and they're like, oh, you know, it's not a bad energy, but both of them said, boy, that's the strangest energy I've ever experienced when they have tapped in with him or channeled him with things. And he's just absolutely thrilled and very grateful. And he's mentioned this through Lisa that he's like, well, I've never communicated with humans before. And I mean, up until the point, you know, that he has started to evolve into this huge-hearted, beautiful being. I mean, he was very, very angry with people in the way that he had been treated, and he was doing mean things to people, you know, and especially my sister, because she took his rock, and understandably so. You know, that was like his very special.
They don't like things out of place, right? They like things the way they are.
They do.
It's almost like with the animals, right? Which I think that they inhabit as a consciousness, kind of often, you know, and that it's not really dead people, you know, inhabiting, you know, the rabbit that's doing something weird in the yard. I think it is really our gnomes, our fairies, you know, it's those creatures that are doing it, and they don't like that humans have moved in and every bit of land, and put a house up on every piece
That's
of
right.
land that they could, right? And chopping down the forest and moving the things around.
They're not happy.
It creates disturbances in their world. And while they're not as much a part of our world as we see and our perceptions allow, they very much are there.
Yes,
We
they
are
are.
talking about that rock from the river over here. We have a large river near the house. And, anytime I hold that rock, it feels wet, number one. It's always cold, even if it's warm in the room. And it just makes me feel like I'm back at the river from where I pulled it, where it caught my eye, where it seemed to get my attention. And I took the thing. I can almost feel the strength of the tides in the river. And it's kind of weird to describe, but I feel it in my hands when I hold it. And I'm like, this is part of the river. There is something that kind of comes through it, and that goes back to things like panpsychism, which we've talked a lot about on the show, which is animism, but kind of like specific, saying consciousness, meaning like awareness can occur through any kind of matter. And we think it does, we totally think that's a real thing.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I do too. And, everything is energy. And the thing is the rocks, they're kind of like, because the rocks were here before even the trees were. So they're like the record keepers. So they do have an energetic thing about them. Like you were saying, you could almost feel the water, when holding that rock. When I held his rock, I could feel his anger, and the fact that, it was so hot. Like I said, it came up into my mouth and it was almost, my teeth felt like they were on fire. And I'm like, ugh, immediately I'm like putting it down and, whoo, I'm not touching that one again. And I didn't touch it today either. I left it where it was. I just walked over and took a picture of it. But, they have for so many centuries. And again, I'm just speaking on what I'm newly learning. So I'm not an expert. Nobody is ever an expert anyway. There's so much to learn and you think you know it all. And then the curveballs get thrown at you. But I just lost my train of thought. There it goes. That 61-year-old thing. But anyway,
we do it all the time.
It's true that they do really parallel with us and help us a lot. And that is part of what I've been asked to do with writing these books, is to bridge that gap. And I've even expressed my concerns because it's like the genie in the lamp thing, the mentality of most of the people on this earth who have not had that evolvement, would take something like that and have expectation, and ownership over it. You know what I'm saying? They wouldn't appreciate it for what it is and let it be. You know what I'm saying? So, even Bob's rock, I would protect that with my life, and he knows it. And he knows the present, past, and future, and he reads people's hearts. So, they really can help people. He has done some things for me personally that I know were gifts from him. For instance, I'll say I was waiting for my income tax return and I needed the money for something. I had a car repair or something. I don't remember what it was, but I needed it. And I needed it sooner than it was coming. And so I file my taxes, the income tax return, and I'm like, how long is this going to take? And the guy tells me, he says, oh, well, they're running behind. It could be 4 to 6 weeks before you see it in your checking account. And I'm like, gosh, it could just be here sooner. 3 days. It was in my checking account.
See that?
Wow.
Now
3 days.
Just circles right back to other things we talk about, like witchcraft and magic. And we can put all these labels on this stuff, but it's our entire biosphere is working together. The reasons why we have things like synchronicity and stuff. We don't know that when we're doing whatever ritual or whatever it is, saying whatever words, our heart isn't really just saying to the energy bodies around us, hey, I really need this thing. Can you help me out? And then the thing happens, right? Just like in your example. And that's why they're important. They're very important.
Thoughts have energy.
Absolutely.
They communicate. It's a language that it goes further than the words we use. I believe that. And I think that's wonderful.
We
Oh,
believe
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and more things have happened than that are just like I hear you. He's tapping. You hear the tapping? Listen, yeah, he was tapping. When you listen to this again, you'll hear it. It almost sounds like water dripping, but it was tap, tap, tap. He does he does everything in threes. It's tap, tap, tap. Like when he says F you, F you, F you, F you, me. So so he's making himself known in little ways here. But it's such an amazing thing, and I feel so blessed. I really, really do, because it's not just that he's helped me out with. He's helped me out with other things. My son, who lives here, was struggling trying to find a job, and all of a sudden this wonderful job, like 2 days later, a friend calls me and says, hey, this guy's looking for somebody, is your son available? Ask him if he wants the job. And I'm like, doesn't sound like something that he'd want to do, but I'll ask him. And sure enough, he took the job, and it's like the best job he's ever had. He loves it, type thing. So these things are falling into place. And the thing is they don't look for, Bob is not looking for a thank you, but we make sure even that we always give that gratitude. There isn't a day that has passed, and I've got to remind my son to take him out. I brought fresh baked cookies from Buc-ee's, take him a chocolate chip cookie and put it out there because he loves fresh baked items and beignets. I mean, he's got to be a little bit chubby at this point because we feed him a lot.
Offerings
But,
now. It's really like a big circle of stuff. And this is where the paranormal does collide with the magical folk and the witches of Facebook or whatever, TikTok, whatever we want to call it, and we're talking about leaving offerings for spirits and stuff. And we love that side of it because I think they appreciate it. And I think it is the gratitude. It's not just the thing, it's not he really needs a cookie, but maybe there's somebody reminds me. I don't know how they consume these things, but there is definitely something to it. I wanted to get to a couple of comments real quick, and then I want to circle back on the meditative states in which you've seen them and talk about that.
Well, they shift change too, by the way. He can come, he imitates things. So
very good. Kim Horn. Hello, Kim Horn. She says, I'm being mentored right now by on the elemental energies that I see and feel by two different folks. Angel K has been amazing with this. And then she said the other lady is also amazing. Her name is Gladys Gordillo. And she's a bruja, which is Mexican witch. Just like Angel K, she's always seen them, but Gladys works with them regularly. Yeah, let me see. There's a couple more. Joshua Dixon says, I agree and feel bad for the ghost who's trying to communicate to you in a direct question. And sometimes investigation teams freak out. And that's by when they actually do what you're asking them to do. Right. And then they talk and they actually do the thing.
Like Chris said earlier, it's all fun and games.
Right.
Until it happens.
Right. And then they start peeing their pants.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. They're not even. They run out of the house.
Oh my goodness.
Well, Kristen, we've had this conversation before, and you've mentioned this, and I use your term frequently because I like the way that you put it, that they're not trained monkeys, and I give you credit for that comment because it's exactly right. And the thing is so many paranormal groups will go into a home, and they go in with this persona of toughness. And it's like, okay, touch Blinky. And the light goes off. Did you see that? Oh, do it again. Touch Blinky. The light goes off. Did you see that? Did you get that? Did you? Let's ask one more time. And then they wonder why the spirits are screaming for them to get out.
They're pissed off. Right.
Yeah, because these spirits, they're not like Kristen has said, they're not trained monkeys. Some of these are spirits of people that are highly educated than the person asking them to touch Blinky.
Exactly.
Yeah, and you have to go in with a loving heart, even with that. And please and thank you in the spirit world and in the human world goes a long way.
Much respect, love and respect, definitely.
Yeah, you are in their home.
Right there. Respect.
You need to act accordingly. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, that is absolutely the thing. Thank you, Joshua, for your comment.
Yeah.
And Shaman Sundays, another wonderful show out here on the interwebs, is our buddy Brandon, and
Yeah,
Brandon.
you can see me.
That's because he's our Nomi.
Yeah, that's why he was one of the first people actually that I thought of reaching out to when we were having this issue, and he got back with me, and it just, and the thing is too, is people kind of seem to shy away from the elementals and the fae when you mention the word witch, because that has such a dark connotation to it in the mind of most people. And so they get categorized in that, even though they're separate, and the witchiness is not so much it can be the dark, but there can be the light, but it's not so much about the actual word. Like you talk about rituals and spells and things like that, that are in tune with nature. And I mean, I've never done any spells or anything like that with this gnome thing. I don't need to. You know what I'm saying? He's like, he comes forth. He appreciates us. He helps us. So we give back in return, even though he's not requiring it. You know what I'm saying?
But there are so many elements of what you've been telling us with your interactions with him, starting with last week and actually before in our own conversations side of the show, that sound absolutely witchy. So, I mean, that is our thing. And it's like, well, okay, well, welcome. Or you're leaving him cookies. Well, that's called an offering.
Welcome.
In some circles. And, we do that kind of stuff, right? So I think it's great. And I think that's absolutely wonderful. And it is just what you're saying, what you're keying in on. It's the gratefulness and just the thought energy and being grateful to talk. And it's an expression that seems to carry through to whatever perceptions they might have, which are clearly different than our own. Jack Kilowatt had something here. He said, Chris, physicists just released a paper that confirms our once only spiritual held belief that we are actually connected to everything in the universe and through gravitational waves at the nano level. That is pretty cool.
There you go.
And
that what he's talking about is like that waffling that I see to the air when he was talking about the energetic thing. That sounds that makes sense. It does make sense, and I'm assuming that's what that energetic waffling is. So
that is all right. Yeah. Now I wanted to go back to the meditation point of something you said, because that's where we tend to see spirits, and I do in particular, I do a lot of meditation and I work on this stuff, and we talk about theta levels and stuff a lot on the show, and that's where it comes back to, it sounds bananas, but that's where I'll see a ghost. I'll see it in this kind of in a meditation state, in a state where I'm not asleep, and I'm not just daydreaming, but I'm kind of almost in a daydreaming mode, and I'll start to get really strong imagery, and it's like they want to be seen, or I don't know how to, like, I wish when I tell Kristen, I wish I could paint or something, like I want to put this thing out here, like it wants to be seen, how they come across, and we get messages that way and that sort of thing. You mentioned that you did that with Bob, that you mentioned the psychic ability. We've talked about this, the collective consciousness and things that linger around, like, and being able to touch in those things. Where does meditation come into it for you, I guess?
Because I'm writing the books, and because I also wanted to do a children's book, I wanted to put pictures of him in there. And the way that I see him like a ghost. And of course, in my peripheral vision, I could see him a little bit clearer, but at a distance. But I wanted to get some of the features and details down accurately. And because so I asked him to please present so that I could see him. So he was kind of like in my meditation, pushing his face through, like in that one movie was it a mermaid or somebody that would push their face through the water, the impression of the water. And he was like coming through the portal, misting at me with his face. And then it would kind of go back in and back out. And I could see the features of the larger nose and the little pointed ears and things like that. And I thought to myself in that moment, and not to take away from him, because, just because they look different doesn't mean that they're not attractive. I mean, in their world, they're attractive to other ones like themselves. So, and I made that mistake one time in that haunted house that I had owned, where I asked a lady, I'm like, well, why are they so ugly? And she's like, well, they're not ugly where they come from. So when she was referencing the hellhound, but and he's got a cute person, and Bob's got a cute personality, but he was coming through, and it almost looked a little bit devilish in the sense of what people have drawn pictures of as the devil looking like. He has a little bit of that appearance, and the thing is too, is because he has roots. He's got little roots that kind of coil here that almost look like little horns, but they're not. They're roots, because he's constantly working in the dirt. So he's kind of the color of dirt, for that matter, the soil, kind of the color of the rock that I took a picture of you. His skin is kind of that colored, but he has little sprouts of like roots coming off of him in different places because of where he's working, in the ground. And a lot of times too, when he's walking around, I'll see him like from the waist up, where because his feet are in the underneath, the level of the dirt of our ground, because he's constantly moving rocks, and he's working with ley lines, and he's like when I mentioned about the rocks and the hooting owl, that kind of directed me as to where he wanted his rocks placed. He is in and out of the room. So I just recently felt he does this thing where when he's present, he will grasp the side of my leg, like almost like a toddler. And I don't mean that in a condescending way, but how when you have like a 2 or 3 year old and they kind of hang in between your legs, you know what I'm saying? Or they kind of touch but he does this clasping thing to the side of my leg, like as if I had pants on. Even when my leg and shorts on, it still feels like that clasping thing, so that I know where to address him. And he has done that in the room already. So I wouldn't be surprised if he does. I keep trying to move my head so I'm not blocking those areas, because that's where you're going to see him. If you do see him, if he chooses to show up, he's kind of, thinking about it. He's a little excited that we are talking about him in a positive way. So, and I made mention too to him tonight while I was out. I'm like, look, we're going to be talking about you tonight. However, you want to bridge the gap between the humans and the elementals. And so this is kind of necessary. So please, if you want to show up, show up. And those with gifts to see will see you. And other ones might hear you. I said, so make some noise. And he did. He's been tapping. So,
I've heard that. I just wanted to let you know earlier, I did hear that, but I'm thinking that I was waiting for thumping. But instead, I heard right after that, you said it sounds like water dripping. And it really did.
Yes.
Everybody's going to go back and listen to this. Yeah.
Yeah, it did. And it's not me. It's not me. I'm not tinkling or anything like that to make the water dripping sound. So,
but it was weird. Oh my God, I hear that. Yeah.
Right. And everything is the way you've described him from the roots to the rock and everything. It falls into that Paracelsus classification of this is an earth elemental.
Yes.
So he might have been onto something, because he was onto a lot of stuff. He was a brilliant guy in his day. And it maybe just as a general look, and not to pigeonhole anything or any, because who knows, right? None of us truly know.
And we
but
probably never
it
will.
is a way to think of it, and if they're elements, they're got to be part of some element. Right, if they're an elemental.
Yep.
There was a couple of comments out here I'm just going to get to real fast. Bob mentioned, so question, Chris, are we on the path we are supposed to be on, I suppose? I'm not totally sure what you mean by the question.
I've been sitting here thinking about that question. I even told him in the comments, I'm like, oof.
As far as like the paranormal, Bob, elaborate a little bit and I'll try to answer that better. Let's see. Joshua says, I'm a firm believer in incantation intention. Absolutely. Rocks are a legit source of energy. Yeah, they certainly can be. The idea of any haunted object, right, speaks to panpsychism, to animism. And, as far as the witchy stuff goes, I mean, we all go back to some sort of tribe with a shaman or medicine type person somewhere in our lineage. If you go back far enough, that's what happens,
ancestors.
Right? So we can call it whatever we want to call it, but we all thought, there was something to it at some point. Jack Kilowatt says, we have been taught that thoughts originate in the brain when actually an emotion begins in the heart.
which
Great point.
is
Very
wonderful.
interesting
Yes.
point. We send the message to the brain, and then we react to the thought instead of the emotion. And that's maybe why emotions are so strong with us, right? Because we don't have much control of what happens.
Well, and as we were talking the last show, I think that we were talking about how the heart itself has memory.
Yes.
We were talking about the little girl, the 11-year-old little girl that had a heart transplant and was able to identify the murderer of the person who gave her the heart.
It's crazy.
That's
good.
Saw the case.
Yeah.
True
Yeah,
crime paranormal right there.
Yeah, well, yes, and not only that, but even people that have had transplants with other things, all of a sudden they start eating something that they normally didn't eat before, or they start speaking with an accent. So every body part has memory. People just think of the brain that it does. And in reference to Bob, yes, Bob Brunel, question. I believe that we were all on the path that we're intended to, because we all are facets of the conscious that comes together to make it a whole. So, like I always was on the path of paranormal, and I never did any of this other stuff. And now all of a sudden I'm being placed into this new world that I'm learning so many things about, because now I'm also supposed to cultivate that and bring it into my collective, the collective consciousness of whatever part I'm attributing, that I'm not donating, I can't think of the word, but that I'm, contributing, towards. So, because we are all picking up pieces of things that we're contributing to bring it together as a whole. So yes, we are all on the right path, and being here in this moment, in this room, you are on the right path, because as mentioned before, I'm grateful to Chris and Kristen that this is an advanced class. This is not the 101 class. If you come in here, you already know a lot of the stuff that is true. And so you're starting off from having that basic knowledge, and you're moving forward with it. So anybody else that might come in and click into it and hear what we're talking about, they'll be like, what? But there's still a part of them that gets it on another level, that maybe they haven't awakened because of fear or whatever belief system that they have, but it's still there, and they know it at a very, very deep level. They're just not ready to open that up yet. So
some part of us relates, right? And there's Bob says, I'm 67, and some days I feel like I'm a 5-year-old, so naive in the ways of the world, because it's almost like new knowledge, because of all the conditioning we've had to get you to this point, and the things we've been told to do, and what was real and what's not real. And then when you get into this stuff, you start to see, well, that all becomes undone.
Right.
That's true.
We're always evolving. And to that, I also was thinking, like Bob was saying, like going forward, Lynn was saying, there's no experts. Nobody can be an expert on really anything, because we're always still learning.
That's right. But we have experiences, right? And so that experience is something we put in our pocket, and we go, well, okay. And we kind of look at other people's experiences and say, well, okay, maybe I can draw something from that. Maybe I don't say, oh, that's everything that there is to know. But we say, well, you had this experience, maybe I'll have something similar. There's definitely things in 2024 that we believe that we would not have believed in 2014, say 10 years ago, right?
Absolutely.
We're grateful.
I would have just thought you were completely full of shit.
We're grateful.
It's totally changed. Not you, Lynn, but I just
no, I know what you're saying. I'm like, I know, right? It just
right. Because the experience has showed us, like, oh, there really is something to that. And I thought that was just pretty pictures in a book or something, like, say, fairies, and
exactly,
they're absolutely there. And maybe the history did tell us something. Well, look, in Ireland, they build roads around those mounds. Well, they must have really been pretty convinced there was a reason to do that than just knock down the mound, right?
Ancestors.
Yeah, there you go. I agree so much with all of that. So many people, they're so well, if they can't touch it, see it, smell it, taste it, then it doesn't exist. And I think that we've talked about this before too on the last show, about how the medical field, there's this component of energetic body that's never addressed. And so, because they can't taste it, see it, feel it, and it's not literal to them, then it doesn't exist. And that's how it is with a lot of people too, even raising children and things like that. The kid will come in and say, Mom, so-and-so standing right next to you. Oh, there's nobody there. Well, yeah, but the kid can see them clearly standing there, and the parent saying no. And, those things don't exist. There's no such thing as ghosts. How many times have you heard somebody say that? Oh, there's no such thing as ghosts. They tell their kids that so that they won't be afraid. But really, the person telling the child that the child's not afraid. They still had that openness, from coming so recently from the other side, that they're not afraid of it. It's just like, oh, there's a ghost. I mean, like growing up in my house, it was like, there's a toaster, there's my mother, and there's a ghost. It was no big deal. But because the parent is conditioned to being afraid of it, they then, oh no, there's nothing there. There's no such thing as ghosts, because they don't want to have to talk about it, and it's their discomfort level. So,
2 times now I've seen stuff move in your background, and they haven't been through the banister like we thought. They were in the upper corner. I just saw something, and I'm not going to say it.
That's what we were talking. Like, you saw that, right?
There was something that moved through, and it was possibly moth. I'm not going to say it wasn't. Could have been. And then I saw something actually twinkle about where between like that doorknob and the couch is. I just kind of like light up and disappear. So, well,
I wouldn't be surprised when you play this back. You may even see more, and you might even hear some things that, because we're talking, that's being picked up, some EVPs. You just never ever know that. I remember one show that I was on. The speaker, me being the speaker and the host, he didn't hear it. I didn't hear it. But when you played it back, like at 25 minutes, there was this huge sigh. Very loud, very obvious. The audience heard it, and they all commented on it. So you may catch a lot of things on the back nine after watching this. And and he is in the room. He is more comfortable. He was standing next to me just a few minutes ago. But the more that you embrace this, the more that they allow you to see, which is another thing. I actually saw a fairy coming in on a monarch butterfly. And I was at Bill's house. Bill has these flowers that are growing, but this was last year when they were full in bloom. And I'm watching at the kitchen window, and I see this monarch butterfly came in, and Bill had put some Seven Dust on this one plant that he didn't want the caterpillars eating, before we knew that you use something else. You just ask them to reroute or give them something that they can eat. You know what I'm saying? So that they leave the rest of it alone, kind of like a 2-year-old. You know what I'm saying? I didn't mean that to be condescending. I shouldn't have said it that way.
No.
But,
I know what you mean.
Fine.
I think it speaks to belief systems and being open to the things. Because if you are closed off and you let the conditioning get you, you're not going to see much. The skeptic doesn't see a lot, and they have reason to be skeptical because it builds on itself. Where it's not that everything is paranormal, but if you're not open to anything changing in your environment or having some sort of perception of something that we're not used to seeing, it's totally changed for us. Like, we have seen way more than we used to because our bar did lower. And that is not to say there isn't pareidolia. There isn't these things. And, these kind of long standing things, or something sounds like something else. We get that.
We had a bird swearing at us. So, yeah.
Yeah, kind of.
Damn it.
But
it went with the conversation. So,
yeah. I just feel like it opens the door to at least more possibilities.
It does. The day that I was watching this monarch butterfly, beautiful butterfly, comes, and all of a sudden it's headed for this bush thing, and it reroutes to the one next to it. And I see this thing, it came off of it and just hovered in the air. But it looked like a little tiny piece of rice, but it was colored like the monarch butterfly. No wings, nothing. It was just like self-propulsing in the air, for lack of a better word. And I'm like, that's a fairy. Now, fairies don't have wings, people. They really don't have wings. That's something Disney did for Tinkerbell, and back in the in the time.
Song.
Huh?
Fairies don't have wings.
Fairies-
Fairies don't wear boots. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Fairies don't
So
have-
I mean,
Fairies
well,
wear
I mean,
boots. They wear
there
boots.
might be some with
You gotta
wings, but
believe
they don't. I mean, but this one didn't have wings, and it was just like dangling in the air, and then all of a sudden it went off, and I'm like, I felt so blessed in that moment because I saw it, and it was beautiful. It was colorized just with the orange and the black, and there was some yellow on it, and I mean, it was only as big as a piece of rice. It was that small, type thing, and but it rode in on the monarch butterfly.
Wow.
Literally, and then steered it away from the powder and to another area into the flowers. And and I'm like, I don't care what anybody says. I know what I saw, and to me that was seeing a fairy, and and it will always be that way. I don't care what anybody else says.
Yeah.
It was true to me.
We think that's great.
I agree with you.
Yeah. We think it did. That happens. We thought there was a brownie in the house, right? A kind of fairy, a short guy that we kept just seeing in the corner of our eye. We just see some little figure just walking by.
He let me see him, and
And
at one point,
that's all
full
we got,
body, and I'm like, he literally looked like something out of the Borrowers movie. He's looking for something. It was like a feeling that he was looking for something. I don't know.
It was always
really
just
weird.
Sketch things like from room to room, just enough to like there's something here, but we don't know a lot about the personality of said creature, and we haven't seen him around too much lately. But he was making noises and stuff and around the house, and there's stuff. There's
cats.
stuff
Cats are great
happening.
detectors, and
The cats. Yeah, check all that out. To go back to some of our comments, let's see. Joshua says, "Spirit can only reveal itself up to us and how we deal with, right?
Exactly. But and then what Josh was saying is right, dead on, because if a person is afraid of something, they're not going to the fairy world, the spirit world, they're not going to present to that person if it's going to make them feel afraid. Most of the sometimes you've got souls wandering through that do it anyway, and because a person who hasn't engaged with or acknowledged their gifts, they see something, they get freaked out. But for the most part, because things are energetic, they won't, always approach a person that's a non-believer. And not only that, like even with salamanders and stuff, how many kids do you know that go into a creek and decide to catch the salamanders? Yeah. Well, I mean, we've all done it, okay, but we didn't know. We didn't know the significance and the importance of the salamanders and all of those sorts of things. And I'm seeing movement over here at the moment too myself. But these things are important, which is why I want to write, in addition to the 3 books that I have been asked to write, because I'm like, look, I'll be happy to write them. However, I am clueless. So you're going to have to tell me what to write. And I was told that I'd be given downloads, and I am being given downloads. I mean, there is stuff coming out of me that I'm like, really? Type thing. And it makes sense. And it all is coming together. So they're doing their part. I'm doing mine. And I'm just a tool for them to get. I mean, I don't even really take credit for this. I mean, I'm honored to be asked to do this, but it's not my words writing the book. It's what they're sending through. So it's a tribute to them. I hear them tapping in the kitchen. So anyway, it just I believe it. I know what I've seen. I don't care what anybody says. I mean, do I look crazy to you?
Not at all.
So,
do you think maybe that we've talked about this before, and I don't know if you and us have talked about this, like spirits sometimes present themselves as they want to be presented. In other words, they're using things you may know. They seem to be able to know our names. They seem to be able to know our intentions a lot of times, that maybe that, they want us to have a certain perception of what they look like. So when we say Bob looks like this, or this spirit, this has got to be the spirit of a little boy, other than say the audio, but really including maybe, the words that are said. Do you think that that's an intentional thing on their part, and that they're really different than that? Like they want us to be able to perceive them?
You know, sometimes, and
Certainly.
more so the things that are a little bit more negative, because there's that, as we talked about before one time about that imitation thing. So sometimes they will present as something more acceptable in order to be, for you to relax with it. Oh, that's just grandma, or that's just the little boy in my house, or that's just the lady that walks the hallways, when it might be something different. And you have to go with your gut on that. And as we were talking, I think towards the end of the last show, talking about, there are so many things on this earth right now that are mimicking, and they are misleading, that even some of the psychics, Katie Turner, for instance, and I were talking, and she specifically told me that when she reads for people, she has to ask the dead certain questions to ensure that they are in fact that spirit, because there are so many things coming in presenting as something else. The story of my son with my mother that came in, and he's like, grandma, and then when she turned, there was this reptilian tail. It wasn't grandma. So, and even Bob was presenting as my father in the ugly golf pants, which that picture was laying right where the rock was on top of a filing cabinet. So he was also coming in mimicking as my sister, who had just passed in a white t-shirt, and the feeling just was off. So I knew, even though it looked like her, that it wasn't her. But then we found out, but now he's not trying to, he just is what it is. And the thing is a lot of times they don't realize that you can see them. So, and in my case, even aliens that have come in and they're hiding behind the veil, with the one patient that I had where they were like plugging things into her and pulling things out and replugging things in, they didn't realize that I could see them. So they came as what they were. Sometimes, but things sometimes will present as something different than what they are. And to me, I use my weapon of radiating love at them. And then if it's anything malevolent or negative or something other than what it is, it will shrink it like a booger, and it won't be able to get out of the room fast enough because it can't stand to be around the love. But if it really is a little boy that's lost, if it really is your mother, they will engage with the love, and they will remain in the room because they can stand it. You know what I'm saying? Because they're either coming in to check in on you or that sort of thing. So to me, that's how I determine whether they're real or not. Because whether you're a dark elemental, which there are the dark and the light, if you're a negative alien type thing like the Greys, which we were talking about before the show started, but we're not going to go there. But they can't stand to be in the presence of love. It's an emotion unknown to them. And so, and it's something that they will never, ever, gain. And it's also something that some of the aliens that are like abducting people and stuff like that, they're trying to get that life spark that has the emotions, that has all of that, and they will never get it. They will never get it, because that is something from source. And whatever that source is to you, I believe God, or I call it a source, and that's my thing. You might have another name for it for you.
The collective of all our consciousness.
The collective, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
sure. Maybe it is that, because we are so many things. We are dark, we are light, we are all these things. One couldn't exist without the other. So something has to exist, and maybe what it thinks is love is what we consider pain, or these kind of things. It's just perceptions, and it comes down to those perceptions. And like you were saying about them looking, getting your attention, I guess, looking like your sister and that sort of thing. It almost sounds like they're throwing something at a wall to see, what sticks, like, hey, can you see me? Can you see me? You know what I mean? Like that sort of thing to get your attention. And then once you're engaged, then you get to see what it really is.
It's masks and rules, and it's just everything.
Yeah, because there's a message, right? There is a message, but maybe that, initial contact is something else, because we're dumb humans. We can only see what we can see, and we're stuck with our five senses and hopefully something else. Maybe we're all developing that something else, and that's what this is about.
That's why we're here. That's why we're on this show. That's why people are, congregating here. The thing was about Bob is that because I was able to see him, I was told that he basically, and I wasn't afraid, because most of the time, people see something like that, they run peeing in their pants and screaming and running out of the room, which makes it worse. They relish that's their chocolate, that lush, chocolate lush, they feed on it, if it's something negative, and they love it. But I didn't do that. I'm like, okay, you can't be in here. I can see you. I'm not afraid of you. I was told that he was very curious about me because basically he had met his match. There was nothing. Hey, Linda. There was nothing that he could do to make me go away. I mean, you know what I'm saying? To like scare me off. Hey, Greg, so glad you're here, buddy. And then I was told too that he was actually expecting me to come. So everything falls into place the way that it's supposed to. But he didn't. A lot of the spirits, when I see them, they don't know that I can see them. So they'll present as what they are. And when they try to present and mask as something, I kind of go into that feeling of that connection with the energy. And I'm like, something doesn't feel right. So
right,
if it's my, type thing. And then I question and I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to acknowledge you as my sister because I don't think you are. There's something weird about the energy, even though she's standing right next to me and she's got this white cap t-shirt on that she always presents in. And it was Bob, but he was trying to scare me off. He was pulling everything that he could to scare me off. He wanted us to get out. And leave the property and get out of the house. He didn't want us here. He didn't want us moving things. He didn't want us touching his things. And he didn't want another person messing with his rock. So
that presentation thing is so interesting when you think about the senses that we absolutely have and are familiar with, like say taste, right? Because that can vary. And something that maybe was a dark energy, or what we call a dark energy, or something that's dangerous to us. Right? Like, does it taste dangerous? Does it smell dangerous? We instinctively know things that smell bad are things we should avoid. Things that taste bad are things we should avoid, right? But when it comes to a mental image of something, aka like a psychic ability, and you get a flash of something, it's a little different, right? So it might be something scary or something foreboding in a way that may not be really reflective of what it truly looks like if we could see it with our physical eyes. And sometimes these things do manifest in ways. I'm not saying they don't, or you don't. You mentioned like, the shimmer in the air and that sort of thing. I think that's all very real. We see that kind of stuff sometimes, but it's not clear. It's more like, what is our sense of it, or what kind of thoughts did we have? Did we smell something different? That sort of thing. I think that's the psychic end of it.
Yes, I agree with you on that, and that you tap in on it. And the thing is too, is there was somebody the other day on I was just glancing at something, looking through some things, and they're talking about, well, spirits can't smell. Well, yes, they can. When you cross, whether you cross over or not, you keep your five senses, but it's not like a smell, like with an olfactory nerve and a nose. It's a memory recall type thing. Even with taste, they do have memory recall. My mother told me about the potato salad, and I asked her, and and I'm sure many people in the room have heard me say this already, that when I asked her about, don't you miss the taste of potato salad? Don't you miss the brownies that you used to make, or ribs or whatever? And she's like, well, we don't eat here, but it's all memory recall. So when you think about it, it comes to you, the sensation and the flavor. And in the case of smell, the smell comes to you as if you're eating it or smelling it. So the mind is so powerful and strong that way too. But also a lot of that is registered memory in the heart, which is even stronger than the brain. So that's why they say go with your gut. But if you think about it, the heart's just above your gut. And, or you go with your heart. Yes, do that. Type thing. So when in doubt, your heart's never going to fail you. Your mind will get monkey mind sometimes, but your heart will never fail you.
I think that speaks to the idea of the dumb supper, something we did with Bob Burnell out in the audience on our paranormal investigation. And that's the idea that, you set a table or a place for a spirit. And maybe you can do this at home if you want to try to connect with a deceased loved one, where you prepare their favorite foods and you put a place setting on the table and you serve that food. And I think that's a two-way conversation when you do that. It's like, and your brain knows that's their favorite food, and the spirit also knows. So there's a two-way bridge. It's not just one way. Well, I'm giving this out, and maybe they're there, maybe they're not. But I think it also helps the person setting that table to bridge psychically to the person they're trying to reach.
Oh, it surely does. And the thing is, too, is as I've mentioned before in other shows, my mother and I had a pact about her leaving her hairs. And even on Thanksgiving, there was one of her long, and my mom's been gone for 8 years. I've moved multiple times. I don't even have the same car, but I still continue to find her long white hairs laying across things just intermittently that bring me comfort and let me know that she's there, because life is so stressful. I wanted something more physical to make sure that I wasn't imagining things. And lo and behold, across the chair at Thanksgiving was laying one of my mother's hairs. And I'm like, hi, Mom. So she not only was she with us, she was designating her seat. And the thing that I think is wonderful, and that you said that you and Bob did, is that Bob Burnell, not the other Bob, but is the fact that you left a seat for them. Because the thing about them is they don't sit on top of people. They if you even go into like a wedding and there are gaps between people, there really aren't gaps between people. There are your loved ones from the other side that are sitting there that are watching. And if they can't find a seat, they do this bleachering effect where you see like they're sitting on bleachers, whole bunches of people, watching like an audience up in the corner of the room. When you walk in towards the back, they'd be like angled in and watching as well. But they don't sit on top of other people. So it is important to leave them a chair. And my mother picked her chair, and I to this day, and my sister leaves feathers all of the time. So she had a bird aviary, but I'm running across feathers in my house that I don't have any birds, type thing. And all of a sudden I'll find a little feather on the floor and I'm like, oh, thank you. So they can designate, and they do. And it's important, and they are there. They are there. So that's great that you honor them in that way.
Loved ones do stick around in some way, shape, or form to see how things turn out and guide us, and that whole thing is a show of respect too, right? We started with that. We say respecting, or setting a table, or whatever it is, it's gratitude, it's respect. I think it's good. I think it keeps things good for us here on the planet in this incarnation.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And the sad part is that because there's like the medical field, there are so many people that are still very tunnel focused, that they don't acknowledge these things. And I just lost my train of thought again. Don't turn 61, and I haven't had really sleep since 1:00 in the morning. This morning.
Goodness.
Yeah, because I was driving. So, but there was a point that I was going to make with that. It was a good one too. Oh well, I'll catch my thought later. It'll come back. But it is important to acknowledge them, because they are there. And I wish that thought would come back, because it was a little thing that blurred. Anyway, keep going. So
no worries. Lots of comments out here. We'll do some comments and regain our thoughts, because we're the same way. I do this all the time, sometimes mid-sentence, which doesn't help the show at all.
I actually asked Chris earlier to go out and get me some Post-it notes. I just need to Post-it note everything that I think of. And then I was like, I need a scribe. That's what I need.
There you go.
Excellent. Jack says, I love how Lynn calls them downloads. You're right. And that's a more modern term for what people have been talking about for thousands of years. And it is basically gnosis, right? Would you say this is the same thing? It's when it's an alien talking to us, or a spirit, or whatever it is, some kind of deity. That's gnosis,
Mm-hmm.
that downloads. That's where you suddenly know something that you didn't know prior and probably would have never thought of. Would you agree?
Exactly. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, there's stuff not to, yeah, I mean, there's stuff that I had no idea. And I'm like, really? But yet it makes sense because there were gaps and it puts the puzzle pieces into place. And it's like, you know what? Now that other thing makes sense, because now I have this information and it all comes together beautifully. So I totally understand. And hi, Jack. I totally get what Jack is saying. The words just come from somewhere. And even people that write music will say sometimes you'll ask them, you wrote the song, what was it about? Or, where did you come up with the idea? And it's like, well, I didn't.
I started behind you, by the way. Just again.
Did you?
Yeah, from the window going toward the door. This time, definitely not a bug, because it looked to be about the size of my hand, is right there where I'm showing you on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
But back like above your couch, just moving toward the door and just gone.
Yes, he comes that way. There's a set of French doors just on the other side of those stairs that go into a family room, which is a portal that he comes up through, and he circles through that. So yes,
because I'll be honest with you, like I was kind of half thinking, all right, the first time maybe that was a moth, just small, and just reflected, but that was large.
And he just started tapping again when you were talking about him. He was tapping. Actually, he tapped the door. It was one single time he was tapping the door. So yeah, when you listen back to this, you'll hear these things. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Joshua
thank you for being here, Bob. We appreciate you. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. These are all good people who want to share with you, not take from you. So yeah, it's a good thing.
Josh says form will show itself, so it may not be what you want, but they're trying to bridge the gap. It's up to us.
Exactly. Which is why.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm writing the books. And he makes a good point about that. It may not always be what we want, because sometimes people can't see things because they're anticipating a specific thing. They're not just being opened to it. So what Joshua is saying is very, very wise, because that is true. So you have to have an open mind and not be skittish, because it might present as something that's considered a little bit weird looking to you, and you may make you feel a little uncomfortable. But don't ask for what you're not ready for. And we were mentioning that too about some of the paranormal groups that go in and they want to see it, and then when they see it, I just saw an orb fly by. They want to see it, and then all of a sudden they see it, and they're like, there's that little bit of fear there. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So
I know exactly what you're saying.
There's a moment of panic. We like that phrase, when physics go out the window, because it has. We've seen things just that can't be real, but there it is. It's real, and it happened. And all right, how do you explain that? How do you debunk that?
To get out in the cemetery.
Making ourselves so expert at debunking stuff, and then something else happens. I can't really debunk what just happened. That makes no sense at all.
No.
All right, you have to start to accept, and that leads to having a more open mind, which is
and more sightings of other things. And once you have that acceptance, they then trust you with more things.
Yes, and I think that's part of the gateway to opening up all the stuff. But you can get carried away with it. I mean, I love this example. I used to go on these investigations with teams. A lot of times there were public investigations. This is a long time ago. And it would always be a guy that would, go on that night that was always attacked. And I hate to discount his experience, but if you were privy to it, it really seemed like bullshit. Right.
Well,
so, oh my God, it hit me. And then just hear him through the whole house, and just like everyone. And and then you're just like, okay. I hope he's not going to the next one.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, well, I agree with you. That kind of, where's the claw mark? Where's the bruise? Where's the bite mark? And there isn't one.
It would just all be mental.
And the entity that touched him is standing there giggling because this guy's like, woo, like jelly, freaking out because something touched him. But yet
killed some of that stuff because he was just too open to it. Maybe we'll believe it that.
Well, and he was asking for it. He's there in an investigation. I recently went to a hotel that was haunted, and they were having an investigation there, and the person that was speaking was saying, oh, and I got this, this, and this, and it really happened. You can even ask my wife. And it's like, I believe that it happened. You don't have to convince people that way because you have a little bit of doubt in your mind. You still have that, you know what I'm saying? And it's like the thing that was funny too is there are spirits walking all through this hotel, and they're like looking at him like, you don't even realize that there's one right behind you. I can see this person behind you, and then there was a man going the other direction, and it's like I don't go on investigations because, for one thing, I don't want anything following me home, and because I can see them anyway. So I'm like, oh well, there's one, hey, aim it over here because there's one, same thing. So I get it. That the guy that it kind of ruins it for everybody in the sense, that this guy's freaking out and kind of getting all of the attention when everybody's trying to focus on something, different.
Exactly. I think in that case it was a call for attention, but that's neither here nor there. I know that's just the other extreme of things too, right? You don't want to be that person either.
I know. That person,
under attack. Let's see. That is what I meant about fighting with myself. Bob Burnell says I can almost feel something different in the world around us, like out of the corner of my eye.
Yes.
That does seem to be. See what else we got here. We got a few more comments, and I know you've had a long day, and we're not.
No, it's fine. Go ahead. There's more tapping over here. He's actually over here on. Oh, and look at you. There's a little kitty in the room all of a sudden too.
We were all watching him go back and forth.
And just so the audience knows, we are distinguishing between the cat, and other things. And it's very clear that that's a cat.
There's a cat in the back. Yes.
Well, the cat sees him too. He'll sit and he'll watch, and then I'll look and I'll see Bob kind of that energetic thing going through, and the cat just sits there staring at it like he's looking at a mouse, but he's not real sure. He's got kind of like that, kind of like, what is that? But and they're mesmerized by it. They just sit there and they watch, and I'm like, what is he watching? And then I'm like, oh, okay, he sees Bob or some of the I don't mean this to be condescending, but the minions that are sent in that Bob has become very, very protective of me, for that matter, and my family, and he comes in when needed. He sends his army of things into. This is just off the beaten path. I had a lady who I was clearing something off of it, and she had mentioned that after halfway through that it was something that was more malevolent or demonic. And I mean, I could almost hear growling on the telephone, and I'm like, well, demons are above my pay grade. Bye. I can do them, but I don't like doing them unless it's like a family member or a friend. I would prefer not. Because I suffer afterwards too, from
That's
some of the
true.
energetic thing. So I'd rather not go there. But
we actually have that happen.
Do we find that it's like a vampiric thing, like where your energy is being taken from you?
Yes. As a matter of fact, well, when you go into clear houses, you have this energetic field. You have to do preparation beforehand to make sure that you don't have any cracks in your windshield, so to speak, so that nothing can attach to you. But the thing is that they don't want you there. So you're under constant attack by them while you're in there trying to clear them out. And you're constantly having to maintain this force field, which is why people, when they're clearing houses, they're so exhausted, and it's a different kind of exhaustion. I mean, it's tired to the bone. I mean, I've actually slept 18 hours before after clearing a house and only gotten up to pee and eat. So, wow. Something, and then gone right back to bed. I mean, I was disabled after that because I had to regenerate. And it's even worse if you've got family members in there that are whispering, did they find anything? Did they see it? oh, they saw something. So their fear is emanating and creating the chocolate. I call it the chocolate. It's the loosh that the things are feeding on. So they're even beating us up more, while they're in there, because the family's feeding it while we're there. So yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe from that entity's perspective, it's pure love. And I think that's what makes our universe wonderful, right? To have the dark.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Is it really nefarious? Does it feel like it's being nefarious? It's a good question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to bring you love.
Yeah. Well, when in doubt, hey, listen,
love you.
Love conquers all. And that is true. And it's a very, very strong thing. So when in doubt, just send something love, and if it's something that is malevolent, it will literally melt it off. And like I said, even with, it shrivels them. If you are sending them love, they have the loosh is not there that they feed off of. So it disables them. When there is that loosh for them to feed off of, it enables them to do more physical acts while they're feeding. So yeah, it is like a I can't say vampirial kind of thing where they do. Yeah. They do that.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a Simpsons episode with Mr. Burns, and he comes in and out of the bushes going, "I bring you love," and they actually think it's like an alien. I can't get it out of my head now.
Yeah, it's kind of.
Some of the darker force things that I deal with, they look at me like I'm alien because I'm a house that I went into. I mean, it was, and now I believe that some of the things were also elemental in there, and I didn't know it at the time because of some of the ways that they were presenting of some very interesting looking things. But there were also spirits that hadn't crossed over in this room too. And I sat down in this room, and my son actually called my daughter, and he's like, "You wouldn't believe what mom just did," kind of thing. He was telling people, "You wouldn't believe, what mom, because I go in there and I sit down in this room and I'm like, okay." He said, "I want to teach you a class on love. I understand that you don't have that emotion. I mean, just like this, just very that matter of fact. I understand that you don't have that emotion. And I really think that if you could learn how to love, then you would be able to help change your ways. You would be happier. So I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you." And I could see these two in particular in the hallway, looking into the doorway, looking at each other, then looking at me, then looking at each other, and gone. They're like, they think I'm crazy. They thought I was nuts. They're like, they've never seen anything like that before. And so they were out of there. But even though they would come back just to test to see it, I'm like, "Oh, come on, class on love. Come on, I love you. I love you. I love you. Love, 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 love." I mean, out of the room. So, and I'm not saying that in a way to make fun. I want to make that clear. There is a mutual respect there. With
get that.
So, and so I'm not saying in a sense that it's a ha 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 thing. Look what I did. But love, when in doubt, shift your fear into your heart chakra and emanate. You have the power to put sonar rings of pink anywhere that you go, even if a person's being nasty with you, or you're fighting. Take that moment to sit and center and focus and send that love light out. It will shift things for you.
Yeah, I think that's great. And that's wonderful advice. Remember the heart, project that energy, that good stuff. That's going to help you. It's going to even the keel and even the playing field as well. Jack Kilowatt mentioned that it's absolutely automatic writing. To one of our other points, I'll be doing something and I might hear the first line or just something urging me to write. Right. This is, I think, going back to the downloads comment, right?
Yes, that's exactly right.
Where it comes, just from out of nowhere. And this speaks to nature inspiration. Is another topic we love on the show, because where does the inspiration come from? When you talk about musical inspiration, we're talking about vibrations, right? How many musicians say, like Paul McCartney, Tori Amos, all these other people we've talked about, say these songs came from nowhere. And I felt a little of this as a musician myself. It just, boom, comes out. I'm like, where did that come from? I don't even know, but it's a vibration, right?
It is. And part of it comes from the collective consciousness too, because sometimes that message will come out to more than one person. So how many times, I know in my lifetime, I've thought of, wow, wouldn't it be really, really cool to create this gadget? And then I never do it. But then a month or two later, a year later, I see a gadget just like what I was thinking about creating myself, made by somebody else. You know,
Like,
I mean,
You've got a
I've
couple of
done that
stories of
like
that.
3
Yeah.
times in my life, and I'm like, damn it.
Why did
Yes.
I come up with that?
yes. So those drops come through
Mhm.
because not a lot of people are going to act on it, but then there's always going to be this one that's finally going to say, okay, well, I'm going to do this. But you
Right.
do, yeah, like, yeah, darn it, you
There's a
know, I
story
should have
about
done that.
Prince. Prince used to record everything, copyright everything,
Yeah.
like immediately as soon as he would get stuff. And apparently people that were around him knew this about him, and he almost seemed obsessed with it. And his rationale for that, for any kind of song idea, just like it was just like a little bit nuts about it, was that he felt that somebody else would write the song, meaning that the inspiration came out and like a wave in a way you might want to think about it. It's like he's got it because he's tuned in, and this was his gig, right? Another artist like him may get that same inspiration, and that's what he thought. He wanted to get it done in like under him before somebody else could get that same inspiration. Like it was a message just coming through the universe. And maybe it was. I mean, he was so brilliant. He was a genius. Very tuned in. So yeah, to your point, Jack, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. And it's funny that you're chuckling over it, and Kristen too. She's like, yeah, I've done that. You know, we've all done that, where these things have popped into our heads and we're like, wow, that would be a really great idea. But then we don't do anything with it. And the collective consciousness means for it to come into fruition. So they have to hit a couple of us up and things like that. And hi, Irene, you know, that way, so that one of us take the bait and do something with it.
We could have been billionaires.
Oh,
Right.
like over and over again. Who knew?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
Velcro.
could have all been
who
famous in
knew?
Japan. I don't know. So do I read the
Yeah.
Kiko? Right, that's a common saying in America. Whoopee, stars in Japan. Thank you for joining us, Irene.
I'm trying to move so I'm not blocking the area, because he is present in the room. So hopefully you will see some more stuff.
Yeah, folks, if you're just joining us, we've been talking about a gnome, a type of fairy that is living in the residence that Lynn is in right now. And we've already seen some very unusual light things happening with our eyes, and hopefully you can see it where you are at home. Irene says a Japan airline pilot was retired from his job from seeking a UFO flying over the North Pole. And it's sad we don't talk about UFOs or spirits in Japan. So you're saying that you have a different perception, or the culture has a different perception of UFOs, UAPs as we call them here today in the US than they do in Japan. Well, that's pretty interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know about the rest of the world in there.
But in the same token, they do have like the jinn. Aren't the jinn and things like that things that they talk about in Japan and places like that?
I'm not sure. Jinn is Middle Eastern.
Middle Eastern. I'm sorry. See, I don't know that much about it.
In the Quran, I think 3 times the jinn are mentioned, which is like a religious, very seriously taken religious book like the Bible, and jinn do appear in it.
Well, but and Irene, if you correct me on this if I'm wrong, but they're the Japanese people, they're very, very in honor of their ancestors that have crossed over. So, like they even have these beautiful altars that are created, that they burn incense and they go speak to the ancestors when they need guidance and things like that. So there is some spirituality there. It's just some of it's seen as more acceptable, and some of it is not. So, and again, it's a what we were talking about before about that herd mentality and that fear thing. If you can't touch it, see it, smell it, that it doesn't exist.
Oh, there you go. All right.
The herd mentality. I like that.
Getting through a few of the comments out there. We love you guys. Don't want you to feel ignored. Jack then says that's why we receive messages from the universe, because we are the universe, eternally connected at the nano level, and that may very well be true.
Yes,
it goes to Bob Burnell's question about if we all have our own path. It's like, do we though? Is the universe really connecting us all to do that?
To guide
That's
us.
why it's really right.
Yeah,
Like
it's
you
like
guide.
guidance. Yeah.
It's my understanding from Bob that the collective consciousness, that it's almost like drips that come down, and each thing experiences different things to bring it back so all the facets are there to collect, to make it a whole. So if we all had the same path, the education, well, for lack of I'm not getting the words right because I'm a little bit tired, but you do need different paths to collect different kinds of energy in order to be able to come back and feed the collective consciousness, for lack of a better word, for that. So,
Interesting. Greg's point, so he says we are predestined. How do you feel about this, Lynn? Free will or predeterminism?
Oh no, we both. We do have free will. A lot of stuff is predetermined. However, there are different paths that you can choose to take to get. The end justifies the means, and if you don't get to take the path to justify the end of that means, you reincarnate and come back to do it again. So, and that's why too, even with mental illness and addiction, these things purposely attach because they see the future of this person. So they try to derail them off that path to come to that comment, to that goal that they're meeting. But there are multiple avenues to come to that goal, if that makes sense. But they try to derail them. And then again, you may only complete part of your things and then you have to come back. So both.
Sounds like hunting and survival in a way. But
Yeah.
whenever we talk about free
Primal.
will and predeterminism,
Yeah.
I always think of those adventure books when I was growing up where it would get to a thing and you'd have to make a decision. It would say, turn to page 67 if you want to take the right-hand path.
Well, what's funny is my mom comes through every once in a while. She was talking about the Akashic or Akashic, I don't know how you say it, but you know what I mean, the records, and how there are, in addition to it, there are these this area, a hallway of like cubbies with veils over them. And the ones that have the veils that remain over them are missed opportunities. So, you have paths to take, and you might take the path that's 6 miles long, and then you get on the other side and you realize that there was this path that was 1 mile long, and you could have taken the shortcut, and saved so much time and effort and not had so many trouble on the bumpy road. So, of course, those are things that you don't know until you get, until you're on the other side. But those are some of the things, those choices that you have and opportunities to get you to your goals. So, yeah.
I think that's wonderful. Oh, you've been on almost 2 hours. And as we wind things up, and I know you're tired and we're tired as well. We wanted to ask you, like, what kind of advice would you give somebody who wants to become like yourself and have these kind of psychic gifts, to be able to see elementals, to have these sort of downloads? As you mentioned, what was the most influential thing for you in growing your gift?
Well, for one thing, being raised in a haunted house, it was commonplace to see them. But of course, as everybody knows, I went through that period of traditional religion where I was made to be afraid of my gifts. And it wasn't until I had this horrific incident happen of the house that I was never able to move into that I was then reconnected with like minds that helped me to embellish it. And I'm saying that because I took the 6 mile road instead of the 1 mile road. So, I could have taken another path that was a lot easier than the one that I ended up taking to get there to the bumpy road. And really the end justifies the means. The bottom line is that I was supposed to enhance my gifts and that I was supposed to be able to do these things naturally. I mean, we are all born with these gifts. And the thing is people, they think too much. They think too hard, and they anticipate that it's supposed to be a specific way. And it's very subtle. It's very, very subtle, some of the things that happen, and they doubt these things. They'll see something in their peripheral vision, and they've learned to be afraid of it, or they question it, or they doubt it. Was that really? No, I didn't see anything. I'm not sure, because they're expecting it to be a particular way, or they're expecting it to look like a human being, and maybe it looks like the banker on Harry Potter. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then they freak out, so that emotional part too. So you have to work on your emotions, and you need to really be sure that what you're asking for, you really are ready for and you want. Because even as we do have guardian angels that do watch over us, or beings that help us, and they stand back so that you can have your freedom of choice for things, but they like to be called upon to help out. So, when you call upon them to help out and you ask for something, you better be ready, because you may get what you're asking for, but you have to be ready, and you have to be open-minded enough to not doubt yourself or question, and to not expect it to be a certain way. You know what I'm saying? So you start subtle, and most of the time most people in the beginning, they'll see things out of their peripheral vision, that they'll look at direct, and then they'll look at it directly and there's nothing there. So they assume, oh, that was nothing. No, it was something. And as you start to acknowledge it, things will start to open up for you, and you will be given more and be given more and be given more. And to show gratitude, thank you for the gift. Thank you for allowing me to see that. Shows that you're welcoming it, type thing. And be prepared too, because, with gifts, there's the good and the bad. Sometimes you might see stuff that you really would wish you had not seen. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So, be prepared that it's a two-sided coin.
It reminds me of your story and the ghost that was flashing people.
Yes.
The naked ghost.
Yeah. I sent you a pic. Didn't I send you a picture of that?
Yes,
I sent
absolutely,
yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, Weenie Man.
About the naked ghost, and that was a very real thing. But
Yes.
it sounds like what you're saying, to answer my question, was the experience of being in the haunted house, of things happening around you that just could not be denied, was a real road opener in a way.
Yes.
Because now you knew, wow, there are these things. And I think we all kind of innately, and if you're watching this show, there's a good chance, a very good chance, probably a 99.9% chance, that you do believe there is something outside our realm of general perceptions, our normal perception, that is just waiting. And you're sitting there with your rational, and I'll put that in quotes, rational mind, and what is happening around you to weigh out. And the belief system of, knowing that there is more, seeing it for yourself where it becomes undeniable, opened up more of your abilities and talents, because now you knew, oh my God, there really are things that's right there. Not saying it's with that, but that was the real road opener for you.
And exposure. And I just want to mention this, and my battery might die, so if it clicks off. But when I went through that issue with the house, I also contacted the attorney's office that I did the closing on the house. And I told him the story, and he's like, really? He's like, really? And I'm like, yeah, if you don't believe me, you and your wife, the house has the electric on, the water's on, there's bedroom furniture in one of the rooms. You're more than welcome to come and stay the weekend and experience. And of course, he's like, no, thank you. But I went back to him when I bought an additional house and had him close on that house. And when I was there, he was like, you know what? He says, I was in a house the other day that I was doing a closing on. He says, and I thought of you. He said, because there was something weird about that house. He says, and I thought that I saw something in that house. So now this man he would not tell anybody else. He's an attorney. You know what I'm saying? But now all of a sudden, because I brought it up, he's now telling me because he wants that validation. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, oh, you probably did. And he says, yeah, so that opened a window for him. It cracked it. Now, what he does with it after that is another thing. He might start running from it. But once you crack that window, it'll start to flood in. But again, it's a two-sided coin. Be prepared.
We agree.
Absolutely. I think that's wonderful advice.
Yes.
This has been wonderful talking to you as usual.
Oh,
as
it's my
always.
pleasure.
And thank you so much for being with us and joining us tonight. Once again, we
And
always
also-
enjoy our talks.
In the home where Bob lives.
Yeah, Bob, you
Yeah,
want to,
sharing your home.
Bob,
your
this is your
home with the
last
gnome.
chance to tap or do something if you want to, because we're going to be signing off here shortly. So, yeah, I haven't felt him in here the last couple of minutes, but he might do a little dance or something for you. But thank you
just
so very
reminding us at the points where
Yeah.
we mention things, because I'm going to. I definitely saw.
We
some,
both did. We
things.
had to keep looking at
I'm
each
sorry,
other
I should
like,
be saying we.
did
'Cause,
you
we
see that?
did. She's like, there's a little under the table
Yeah,
hanky
it's the
panky that
same.
goes on. You guys don't.
Oh, and
Yeah.
that's not a rat. That's a very small kitten. But anyway, that's going across the
So
floor.
cute.
But thank you so very much for having me again. It's always a pleasure. You guys are treasured as friends, but Bill and I both just absolutely love you.
We
And
adore you.
anytime,
love you
please
guys.
reach out. So I'm honored to be here. I'm so glad that you're back, and I know that everybody else in the audience is too. And I want to say to the audience, thank you so much for coming. Please be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Comments are good too for the algorithms
Absolutely.
or whatever they're doing. So, but thank you for being here, and anybody that I did not acknowledge, I love you, and thank you for being here too. So thank you for having me on.
I want to say LynnMonet.com.
Yes, www.lynnmonet.com.
MONET.com
Yes,
is the best
like the
place to
paint.
get your books. And
That's
in fact,
right.
I think one of those books is exclusively on there.
Yes, that's right. And the one coming out, and I actually, I haven't asked your permission to mention her name, but there's somebody in the audience that's volunteered to help me edit this next book that's been sitting for a year and a half done, waiting to be edited. So, so I'm looking forward to working with her. Yeah. So,
That's awesome.
yes, exactly. So I'm thrilled to have her on board with me, and I really, really appreciate it very much. I appreciate her anyway. She's somebody that I always go to if I want the honest truth told to me, because she will tell it to you straight, and I like that. So I'm never offended. I just, she's wonderful that way. So anyway, I love you guys, and
Excellent.
I love you too. Thank you. And
Thank you.
I'm gonna go
You
get my jammies.
You have yourself a fantastic night.
yes.
Get comfortable and relax. And
And
we're
if Bill-
going to catch up with you guys. Hopefully see you next month.
And if Bill's in the room, I love you, sweetie. I hope that he actually, my daughter is with him, and my dog is with him. He's he's taking care of them for me. So while I'm here in Louisiana, so anyway, he's a great dad. He's a super dad.
Fantastic.
So
Fantastic. Well, we love both you guys,
Yes.
and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you again for joining.
bye, y'all.
Good night.
And that is all the time we have.
Press
I
that
did
button.
want to say one last thing before we depart to next week.
Rise from your grave.
Love that. You guys are great.
Yeah.
Thank you all for joining us. There's
Thank
a whole
you,
bunch of you
guys.
out there, and we love each and every one of you.
Yes, we do.
And hopefully next week we'll pick up this conversation and get to things that make you think a little bit. Anyways, thank you for being here. Have a great weekend. Stay safe out there, guys.
Good night.